I'm currently on the phone with Joe. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
There, my name is Joe Hartley. I play guitar and sing for the band Twin Citizen, as well as play guitar in the band If I May. Originally grew up in Kalamazoo, Michigan, lived there for the first couple and a half decades of my life before I moved to Minnesota, and I've been here for 9 years now, and really love the Twin Cities music scene, always did, even as a teenager, and so it's just, it's been really great to break into that scene and meet all the people I've met, get to play with all the awesome acts we've gotten to play with, and yeah, just having a blast.
Awesome, very cool. All right, so why don't you kind of go into some detail about how you first kind of came into contact with music? How old were you? What about it was kind of inspiring and important to you?
No, I can't remember it not being a part of my life. I grew up listening to my mom's Beatles records, and I was a big Lebowski fan. I'm kind of ashamed to say that the Eagles were a lot of what we listened to growing up that I liked, but it was definitely ever present in my house. Big classic rock family, and so growing up surrounded by it, I didn't really consider it as a as a vocation, as a hobby, as a creative source until I was probably third or fourth grade, and I knew I really wanted to play guitar because that was just the coolest sound I'd ever heard, was the electric guitar. I didn't think there was anything cooler in the world than electric guitars. Some 27 years later, I still feel that way. So, yeah, I sung in choirs and church and stuff, and grew up listening to my mom harmonizing with the hymnals, and I think that gave me an ear for harmony from an early age, but I just always really knew that I wanted to play guitar. And so in fifth grade, my parents got me an electric guitar kit from the J.C. Penney catalog, and yeah, never looked back.
When you say an electric guitar kit, do you mean kind of one of those pre-made, like cheap Fender knockoffs that has the little speaker to it, or do you mean like a DIY kit?
No, it was a full Harmony Strat knockoff that had a battery powered amp and a cable and a gig bag and some lousy replacement strings and whatnot.
Sure. So tell me about your process of learning the instrument. How did you go about learning songs and then also learning to like write with the instrument? Did you like just pick up tabs off the internet or like emulate your favorite songs? Did you do private lessons, that kind of thing?
Kind of a mixture of all of the above. The very first day I had it, I got it for Christmas, and my cousins were in town, and one of them was a guitar player, and she's now married to another guy who played guitar, and they taught me, E major and E minor, and then A major and A minor, and kind of, what makes it major and what makes it minor, and I was like, okay, cool, that makes sense. And I kind of just learned things by ear. I would pick out tabs and stuff. I got super into punk rock, so all I really needed to know were power chords anyway. But I was always an ear listener until probably 3 years old. I went into my first guitar lesson, and I was playing the solo for Lagwagon's May 16th from the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 soundtrack. Was my current song obsession. I was playing the solo for him, and I was doing it all on one string, and he was like, "What are you doing? Let me show you the pentatonic scale." And it was kind of like, all right, well, that's all I need to know for the next 4 or 5 years. So I stopped taking lessons again. Fancied myself quite the soloist, playing pentatonic runs all the time. But, I've dipped in and out of lessons over the years. The pandemic, I actually felt like I'd plateaued as a musician a lot, and so I went and focused up on really learning all of the different triads and inversions across the fretboard, and it's really opened things up for me in a way that I don't think I've felt since that day I learned the pentatonic scale when I was 13.
Okay, so tell me about kind of like the next steps after that. When did you feel kind of comfortable joining another band and then writing with other people?
Hey, I think I wrote my first song in 8th grade. My girlfriend called and broke up with me from the ski lift at the after-school ski club that I wasn't cool enough to be in, so I had to channel that somewhere and wrote a song out of that. And everybody liked it. And I was like, okay, that was pretty easy. I think I might be able to be good at this. All I was doing was ripping off all my favorite artists and then changing a thing or two to make it original. But then freshman year of high school, I had a couple friends who I knew from my middle school that played drums and guitar. And then, merging different middle schools, going into high school, I was able to meet a lot more people. And I started my first band as a freshman. And we got to perform in front of our whole school a couple times. And I went to a pretty big high school. So, like, our talent show would be in, like, the 800-seat arena. And we did pretty well there. And I don't know, I've just been either playing in bands or recording solo since then.
Okay, so tell me about kind of after high school and once you kind of reach your your young adult years, how you continue to keep music in your life.
Yeah, I went to Michigan State University after high school. I went and backpacked around Europe for what would have been the first semester, and came back to Michigan State, and it was kind of like going to summer camp in the winter. Like, I'm sleeping in bunk beds. I can't drink legally anymore like I could when I was living in Spain, and but I'd kind of switched over to playing more acoustic at that point. I'd fallen in love with like Iron and Wine and Wilco and Gillian Welch and like early Band of Horses and a lot of stuff that relied more on acoustic instruments. And so I was really fascinated with that side of thing and trying to make the best song I could as stripped down as possible. And then I'd kind of become disillusioned with academics. I never was that great of a student. I had the test scores, but I just didn't have good grades. I didn't care. I wouldn't do the work that I was assigned because I was too busy sitting in class trying to write songs. And so I ended up dropping out of school. I stuck around in East Lansing making music for a while, recorded a couple solo EPs there, and moved back to Kalamazoo. And by this point, I had fallen into a pretty bad pattern of drinking and drug use that ended up pretty much defining my 20s. I'm sitting now on the other side of it, a little over 3.5 years sober now. And it's really apparent to me from a very early stages of my using that it was always going to be a spiral at some point. And so the rock and roll lifestyle was there without the rock and roll success. I was making good music, but I wasn't really putting myself out there because I was spending too much energy using drugs and drinking all the time.
How did you deal with like being out playing shows, going to bars and stuff, but then still trying to avoid, alcohol and maintaining sobriety?
I have a pretty good foothold on it nowadays. I don't think it's something that I would have done when I was baby sober, but I mean, this is also, I've gotten sober 5 times, and this is the first one that stuck for more than a couple of weeks. So, my primary band, Twin Citizen, that I'm the frontman of, 4 out of 5 of us are in recovery, and of those 4, I have the least amount of time. So it's really nice if I have not necessarily like a craving or just like a moment where it's like, oh man, it'd just be so nice if I could just have a drink and forget about this. Or if I have a dream about it or something, which is pretty frequent, I can always hop on the band group text and shoot one out, and somebody's always going to respond, and they always have something good to say about it. And so we kind of keep each other accountable in that regard. And the guys from If I May, they're not in recovery, but they're some of my best friends and would kick my ass if they saw me drinking something. So, and, I don't necessarily need that, I hope, but if I ever do, it's nice to know I got it.
That's nice that you're surrounded by a strong support network. Since you mentioned your band, let's talk about that. Give me some information about what the project is. Are you guys writing and releasing? Are you out gigging? What are you guys up to?
Twin Citizen stays busy. We usually play at least one show a month. We took about the last 8 weeks off to write some new tunes. It's been pretty productive. A lot of our songs are like 6 or 7 minutes long with multiple, movements and sections to it. So it is a kind of a process to write a song. So if we can come out of an 8-week break with 3 new ones pretty much ready to go, that's a good rate for me. But we have our first gig in a while coming up this Saturday at Como Pavilion in St. Paul, and it's for Rise Up Hour, which is a part of the recovery community, something obviously very near and dear to our hearts. So we're really excited to get out there. And I mean, I'd say like 80% of my lyrics reference either the process of, using and becoming sober, or, seeing it from the other side of it. Or I've even done a couple that came of writing exercises of like writing from the perspective of alcohol to myself and things like that. And so I think there's a unique perspective that is there to be had, or there to be appreciated by people who've lived those experiences too. So I'm really excited about, getting out to that group of people. And here in St. Paul, there's a ton of people. It's like Recovery Central USA. So, but we're really excited to be affiliated with Rise Up Hour. Bridge and Mohana, a couple of the people that put that on, are just awesome people, and couldn't be happier to be putting on what's probably going to be the last outdoor concert of the year here in Minnesota.
Sure. So tell me quickly about why you chose to come to the Minneapolis, St. Paul music scene instead of somewhere like Detroit or Chicago.
I had this overwhelming sense of not belonging for most of my life living in Michigan. So in the Detroit scene was very much, more of a muscular rock and roll kind of thing, where I was kind of a softy, Death Cab for Cutie kind of kid. And, Minneapolis was always on my radar as a city that punched way above its weight for some of my favorite music. Like Mason Jennings came out of here, Motion City Soundtrack, the Jayhawks, the Hold Steady, Lifter Puller, anything Craig Finn, really. And then you've got the Replacements, Husker Du, all these bands that I grew up loving. And turns out they all cut their teeth on this scene here. And one of my first big relapse, I ended up going to Hazelden, and I was in Minnesota, and I didn't really see myself going back to Michigan and surrounding myself with all the same people and places and things that I'd been around before in my active use. And so I kind of took that opportunity to put down roots somewhere I always thought I would enjoy. And I after a couple of years living here, I already knew, like, man, there's something here that it's really for me. And once I got into If I May back in 2018 and got to start playing some of the venues I'd been hopping around, watching local bands play at, wistfully staring at, wanting to go play myself, and I was finally getting to do that. It just felt home for me, and still does. The crowds in Minneapolis will give you a chance. They'll show up, they'll listen, and there's a big, I think, ethos or a big pride on supporting local art and local music, and it's unlike anything I've ever seen anywhere else. Where even just if I never leave Minneapolis and only gig in the Twin Cities, I'd be perfectly content at this point in my life with that, because I have so much fun doing it.
That's definitely a good answer. I can't argue with any of that for sure. All right, so why don't you kind of share a couple of your favorite memories that you have of your time participating in music?
Yeah, a contender for best night of my life was last February. We were 20 people away from selling out 7th Street Entry on a Thursday night in February. And there were a couple moments during that show where it was one of those, like, hey, take a mental snapshot right now. Remember this exact moment, because this is as good as it gets. The list of bands who've gotten to play that stage, it's just mind melting. And I felt like I was on one of rock's true hallowed grounds. And we were headlining this place that I'd known about since I was a teenager. And, there I was, 35 years old, and finally getting to do it. So that was definitely, that was a special night for me. That's probably the top one. And the first show I got to play with If I May in 2018, I hadn't gigged with a band in probably 6 or 7 years. And we played Keller Bar out in St. Cloud. And I just remember letting out this like primal scream at the end of it, just overjoyed, the adrenaline from beforehand, all the nerves and all of that just releasing after a great show. And that's really the only drug I get or need anymore. So It's an intense feeling to really, with the amount of passion I try to put into my playing and my writing, to be able to actually go share that with people who respond back to you. There's nothing like it.
I can't argue with that either. All right. Well, where can people find you and check out your social media links and listen to what you're doing or come see you?
Yeah, we're busy on social media. TwinCitizenMNmusic.com is our website. You can check us out on Facebook, Insta. I don't know if we're on Twitter/X anymore. I'm not really a big Elon Musk fan these days. So, um, but we are also on Bandcamp. You can find us there, and we're on all streaming platforms. Twin Citizen, Spotify, Apple Music, all the good ones. We have, I think, 8 songs put out right now. We've been saving up for shows. We're going to go lock ourselves in the studio for a few days and record literally everything we know how to do. But we do have some pretty good stuff out there that we got to record at IPR last year that I'm very proud of.
All right. Well, I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So, what's a message that you believe in that you think other people should hear?
No, I watched that show Ted Lasso, and I fell in love with a lot of the messaging in that show. And one of the best scenes, and I don't want to give any spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen the show. I recommend it to literally anybody who is a human with a heart. Um, it's be curious, not judgmental. I've always maintained that kind, curious, and aware are 3 of the best things a person can be. And if you're curious, it's really hard to be judgmental. It's hard to judge somebody um, accurately without knowing where they've been or what they're going through. And we can make snap judgments way too easily as humans. And I think it's more important to take the time and be curious and empathetic.